In London, technology is the Silicon Roundabout. Introducing a new talk show dedicated to the people of the London technology startup scene. Silicon Real. Each week, interviewing entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, financial technology, accelerators, and incubators in an exciting three-person format. Learn about the people behind the innovation. Locally filmed, locally sourced. Silicon Real. It's about the people. This is Silicon Real, the weekly talk show dedicated to the people of the London technology startup scene. I'm Brian Rose. I also host London Real. It's a similar show, same studio. We get some crazy people in the room like Howard Marks, George Galloway, Tim Ferriss, or Neil deGrasse Tyson is our guy this week, the astrophysicist.
With the rock star astrophysicist?
Yeah. He was voted the sexiest astrophysicist alive. Yeah.
Really?
Which I told him is kind of a backhanded compliment.
Tough competition.
Yeah, I know.
Him and Stephen Hawking.
He is America's most famous, scientific guy, scientist.
Very cool.
Anyways, that's London Real. Check that out if you want. We're here today to talk about tech. My co-host is Colin Pyle, entrepreneur. You're around the world doing coffee deals. You're
working it.
Yeah, well, you're in Germany. You're in Italy. You're trying to deliver these biodegradable pods. What's going on?
Yeah, so been really sort of cleaning up a lot of mess actually the last month or so. So as a startup company, really tough to nail down your supply chain.
Right.
So we fell on our face a little bit, and we're getting back up and redeveloping it. So things are looking very positive, and I hope to have first batch of 100,000 pods in about 10 days. So we got back on our feet quick, but these things happen.
Awesome.
So,
that's why they're going to pay you the big bucks one day for dealing with all these issues. So excellent. Before I get to our guest, I just wanted to give a shout out to TaskRabbit. They're one of our sponsors for the show. They're an online marketplace where you can outsource small jobs to people in your community. They do a bunch of back-end stuff for Silicon Real, actually doing like the clips and things like that. But they'll also find you a housekeeper, plumber, you name it. So we love their show. We had Lauren Sherman on, their head of community, about a month ago. She really killed it. And they're here in London, taskrabbit.co.uk. You get 25 pounds free by using the code REAL25. So
yeah, check them out. And again, I'll always say I'm just shocked at actually the level of ability of a lot of these the taskers that what they can do. Like,
well, I love them because they sent free cupcakes to our office to my co-founder the other day.
There we go.
Free
cupcake,
whatever it takes. Yeah.
Have you gotten free cupcakes?
It was on Valentine's Day. Alice is a lot hotter than any of us.
All right.
Yeah, what's up, Lauren? We're going to talk to her about that. But no, it is a great service, and it's really a temporary workforce that you can just outsource like that. And they bring a lot of that really cool vibe. They kind of have that startup Silicon Valley, San Francisco feel to it. Big about community. So thanks so much to them.
Yep.
All right, let's get on with this. We have Mr. Matt Clifford, who is the chief executive and co-founder of Entrepreneur First, which identifies and invests in Europe's top technical students by supporting them to build startups that solve real problems using technology when they graduate.
Correct.
You start at the very early stage, taking individuals pre-team and pre-idea. This is a concept we haven't talked about.
No.
Your first round of 33 people, I think you built 11 companies. 1 year later, and you have a collective market valuation of about $50 million. It's impressive stuff. Matt, welcome to Silicon Real.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is it's such a unique story, and I'm getting really excited preparing for this because, we've had the incubators in, we've had the WERAs and the seed camps and the number one seeds. We talked all about this stuff, but we haven't had anybody that goes right to the crib and takes them out, from like right when they're graduating, which is a crazy, interesting idea.
Still wet behind the ears.
Yeah, and I was wondering if you start looking, earlier than college.
We're looking forward to our first competitor this like, no, we go earlier than EF. It's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, maybe
promising
like
fetuses.
In vitro, something like that. But it's a fantastic idea what you're doing. I think it's hard for people to get their head around it right away. I was wondering if you could walk us through kind of the basics or some of the questions you get asked normally when people are like, what the hell is Entrepreneur First?
So I guess kind of if you step right back and you say, you imagine yourself as a computer scientist or an engineer, someone who really loves tech, and you may be 21 years old, you're a great university, or maybe you don't study those subjects, but you're a self-taught hacker and you just love building stuff. You get to that kind of point where your parents are starting to say, right, so what's next? When are you going to start, kind of actually getting a job? And you look at your options. And the way, kind of I think it has been in the UK over a long period of time really is that, The banks loom very large in that. The banks are very aggressive recruiters on university campuses. So obviously some big corporates, professional services is huge. But actually, like if you want to build stuff, like really build products that solve real problems, that kind of use cutting edge tech, what do you do? And that's kind of the question that EF wants to be the answer to. So if you imagine this guy or girl, sadly, maybe we'll talk about this, it's mainly guys right now, kind of looking at their options. One option is to try and start their own thing. But if they're going to start their own thing, they need a team. And, I think that's pretty much universally accepted. No one's going to invest in people that don't have teams. But what if you, in your final year at uni, you're about to graduate and you don't have that team already? Like, no one's going to fund you to find a team. And so kind of that's not an option for you, actually, if you haven't already got that person. Or you do have that person, but, you recognize that you don't have the big idea that could really be worth your time. So what do you do? Again, you kind of don't have that option, so you pretty much have to go join a big company.
Because you would need an idea to get into a Wera or something.
Right, exactly, okay. Yeah. And, like Seedcamp and Wera and, doing great stuff, but they're not going to take the kind of people I'm talking about. That's not their model. So what EF wants to say is if you are actually truly brilliant, truly exceptional, you want to build stuff, but you maybe don't know what yet or with whom, EF is your answer. You can kind of think of it as the place where we think the top tech talent in the country comes to hang out to build stuff when they graduate.
And so do you recruit them yourself then?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a huge part of what we do is the recruitment. And
so for every position, how many guys do you touch?
I mean, like tons, to be honest.
Right.
When we started this in 2011, we had no money. Frankly, we'd never done it before. We had no idea whether it was possible to build teams. We had no brand, no track record. And even then, we had like 450 applicants in our first year. We were like, whoa, wow. This is crazy. This is like really tapping into something on campus that people are feeling. This year, I think we had like 700. So we're talking like serious numbers of applicants per place.
Where did you get this idea from? I mean, you were at McKinsey before and did some other things, but like, where does this come to you in your head that we're going to start a stage earlier than everyone else?
It's one of those things that in a way was kind of like overdetermined. There were so many things that in retrospect kind of pushed us here. So I guess one is like tech is what I've always cared about. And yet when I was reviewing what I was going to do when I left university, when I left grad school, I was like, well, you have to go get a serious job, right? Because otherwise no one's going to take you seriously. So I'm going to go somewhere very serious and I'm going to go to McKinsey. And that kind of, in retrospect, seems strange. And then when I was at McKinsey, I think in my class of analysts, like 9 of us are now in tech, which kind of seems strange, right? Why are these people, and like, some of them wildly successful, like the founders of Go Cardless were at McKinsey with us, and, they're doing exceptionally well right now. Like, why are these people going to McKinsey first? Is it because, maybe it would be totally legit if it was that afterwards they're like, yeah, everything I learned at McKinsey, I applied to my startup. But honestly, you go talk to us and they're like, kind of had to spend the first year unlearning most of what I learned at McKinsey. So it's not that McKinsey is the training ground for tech people. It's that people feel they have to do this. So like that was the other kind of thing just going away in Alice and my head. So it's like, well, if McKinsey isn't what these people should do before they start their company, what should that be?
And McKinsey has the cash and the glamour. Is that why people go there?
Yeah, and like, frankly, I mean, full disclosure, I actually had a great time there. It was good in lots of ways, and the best reason to go there is if you have no idea what you want to do.
Is it like the show House of Lies? Have you seen that
I've
show?
not seen that, so I wouldn't.
I
wouldn't like to comment.
Don Cheadle.
No, I mean by and large, it's it's a lot of smart people doing interesting work, real problems. But and I think they still sponsor us, but they would say it's not execution by and large, it's not implementation, and it's certainly not kind of building stuff from the ground up.
It's advisory and it's pure.
Yeah, and for big companies, right?
Yeah.
But what I think you really learn from sort of that type of role is just an incredible work ethic.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, that's certainly true.
And like
that's
hitting deadlines and just like dealing with intense
Yeah.
stress of getting projects done in time and 100-hour weeks. And
Yeah.
I think those are the lessons that really help you out when you.
And that's a really good point. Actually, is one of the things we did want to do when stepping back and creating EF was like, well, what are the bits that actually McKinsey or wherever does prepare you for, and a lot of the program design is to try and get people into the mindset of deadlines and of kind of really hard work, I suppose. So there were a few things that kind of bubbling away make us think, oh, there's a room for this, and then I guess we kind of got lucky in that it was just timing that. This was August 2011. It was about the time that all the kind of tech city stuff was really bubbling up, and kind of actually probably the one time that startups have really got inside McKinsey were quite involved in that piece of kind of work for the government, I guess. And so it just was suddenly kind of staring us in the face that there was this opportunity. It was around the time that the guys at the Silicon Mill Roundabout were starting to kind of really push into getting grads to think about applying for jobs in startups, and lots of things came together really. It felt like there was demand on campus, there was kind of like a supply of mentors and capital, and it was worth taking a shot.
Okay, let's get into the specifics of what you do. You guys have a 12-month program where the typical incubator is 3 to
12 weeks.
12 weeks.
Yeah.
Although where is longer? Isn't that what Dash
Yeah,
was
where
saying?
is longer actually?
Yeah, I thought it was 3 months, but Dash was saying it was 9 months or something.
Is it? Is it as long
Or
as that?
6,
Yeah, I
maybe
think it's more. I thought it was 6, but I don't know.
3 to 6,
I don't know.
yeah.
So your program's 12 months. You take them straight out of their graduate school. They can only be out of school for like 3 or 4 years.
Up to 3 years.
Up to 3 years. They can't have an MBA.
Yeah.
Is that controversial?
No. Well, I mean, like it's
Is it the MBA specifically or master's degrees?
No, it's an MBA, and I'm sure it means we missed some great people. But I think so when we went around and like did our kind of customer development or whatever you want to call it, like talking to people when we started EF, one thing people say was, this has been done before and it always fails. And it always fails because universities do it, they get the business school together, the engineering school, and they get them to try and come together. And it always fails because the power dynamic's just wrong. Like the MBAs want a code monkey, and they like find a code monkey, and then the engineer's like, I don't want to be your code monkey.
Right.
So like actually, a big important part of what EF is if you come around the office, I hope feels like a kind of hacker culture, and I think that's what the guys who come in feel like. They want to be around builders like them. And I'm not saying MBAs can't be builders. I'm not even saying they're not builders, but it's just a decision we've made in order to keep a really kind of flat power dynamic. If I team up with you, there's like no expectation of who's the boss. It's just like we're going to build stuff together.
Okay.
That's the only reason for that.
And you've had 2 years graduate?
Just about to graduate the second.
And what's the size of your second year?
Exactly the same as the first year.
33?
Yeah, 30-ish, yeah.
30-ish.
And then we just selected the third year, and that's bigger, that's nearly double. That's in the 50s.
And do you pay these kids?
So the way it works is when we say 12 months, is absolutely true, but half of that's part-time and half of it's full-time. So we actually count from the day we make your offer as the day at the start of the program. And the reason is that, as you can imagine, if you're taking individuals, probably the most important thing you do is get those people to know each other till they're comfortable forming teams. So between now, we made the offers about a week ago, between now and September, the whole focus is on building a genuine community of people such that within that group of 30, or this year like 55, you kind of feel there's multiple people that you could realistically start a business with. So in practice, that means we get them together sometimes on a purely social basis, sometimes like hackathon style to actually build stuff together, sometimes just to kind of get some like external stimulus in terms of ideas, like people coming to talk about trends or big problems that need solving, big challenges. And we do this again and again and again in increasing intensity over the summer. And we call this the part-time program. By the end of the part-time program, which finishes at the end of August, you commit to a team and an initial idea. We're totally transparent. Those teams and ideas at that stage are very unlikely to be the ones that you graduate with at the end of February. But nevertheless, they're an important starting point. They're an important point for iteration. The full-time program is full-time from September for 6 months. And at that point, it's actually about trying to turn that team and that idea into a company. What's great about EF is because you've done that kind of 6 months of kind of light touch getting to know each other, when the teams break down, because it turns out you and I can't stand each other or the idea turns out to be terrible, there's actually a lot of liquidity in people. So it feels very natural. It doesn't feel like failure to say, you know what, we're not going to work out,
right.
So let's start something together. And I would say if you look at our results in terms of fundraising and valuation, there's zero correlation between valuation and whether it was the first team they settled in or not. So in terms of funding, we don't provide any funding at all for that part-time bit.
Okay.
Basically on the reasoning that the guys would be alive anyway, and like just like a job, doesn't pay until you start in September.
And they have shared office space with you?
Yeah. So we make our office available for the full time,
okay.
And we partner with Workspace Group, who have kind of these kind of club workspaces all over London. Our guys get access to those, and it's been fantastic. It's been great. And then our funding model. Going through a big change this year. Essentially, we're funding everyone for the first 3 months on a kind of stipend basis. Currently working out exactly the details, but more or less paying a kind of minimum wage style covering of living costs for the first 3 months, and then that funds the the liquid stage, if you like, the stage at which there's high team instability, high idea instability, we find that 3 months in, by 1st of December, actually there's high degree of stability. You kind of know, if you do 3 months together, you know whether you want to work together. And you're also starting to get a sense from the market whether anyone wants what you're building. So at that point, we turn into much more of a conventional kind of investment approach, much like, say, Seedcamp or Wire or whatever, we put in a fixed amount for a fixed percentage of the company.
Okay. And you guys are obviously expanding fast. Did you expect to have a class in the 50s this year?
No. I think to be totally honest, this was driven by the quality that we saw in this applicant pool. We didn't feel we could turn down any of these 55 people.
Wow. And where's the applicant pool primarily coming from?
So we're about 60% of people are applying in their final year at university, and about 40% kind of with 1 to 3 years out. This year we had applicants from 105 different universities across Europe, which was great. Although in practice, probably 80% of the people come from about 10 in the UK, 10 universities in the UK. And that's probably a broad reflection of where we spend our time.
So mostly UK?
Mostly UK.
Because it's English, first language, it just happens.
Yeah, and where we've dedicated time. I mean, our recruiting is, I would say, by far our kind of biggest asset. I think we've spent the last nearly 3 years really building great on-campus networks of people who want to build stuff. And, I hope we're starting to become like part of the option set for anyone who considers themselves a builder. So a lot of it is driven by where the cohort were from last year, because they tell their friends, and I think everyone's having a great experience, so they say you should apply to do this. Also, it's just where do we go do workshops, where do we go spend time, so it varies a bit. We sometimes suddenly get loads of applicants from a uni that we've not spent any time in, which is great, but by and large it reflects where we're spending our time.
And what is the grand scheme for you guys? Do you want to scale the hell out of this? Do you want to have a group of 500 people that are going to be your graduating class in a few years' time?
Well, I think the way of thinking about it is I really believe the world is changing in terms of how this kind of type of person thinks about their career and what that means. And I think it's something that Paul Graham at Y Combinator said that, it used to be about what's the most prestigious company you can work for, and now it's like what's the biggest company you can make, and we see that on campus. These are what people want, and we believe at EF we can be the people that actually enable that in a very real sense for a whole swathe of engineers, hackers, whatever you want to call these people around the world. And I can see this certainly operating in the hundreds of people. And actually what we're starting to see as well is, one thing that's changed throughout the cohorts is the type of things they're building. It's partly a reflection of just how quickly technology is advancing, partly a reflection of the kind of people who are applying, but it's becoming more and more hardcore in terms of the actual technology. It's not kind of Rails apps and, kind of Flappy Bird clones. It's, serious hardcore things in machine learning. Yeah. Right. And so, I don't think it's crazy to say a model like this could, be like the Bell Labs of the 21st century, right? If you can actually get all the smartest people who want to build stuff to come together for 6 months when they graduate to give it a go, I think there's some pretty exciting stuff that come out there.
This is a fascinating continuation, because we had someone on here that 10 years ago said, in order to raise enough money to make a real good run in the tech space, you needed $20 million.
Yeah.
And these days, most people agree you just need a few hundred to get that product to market. And now Matt is talking about like a whole new paradigm change where maybe you just go get the talent.
Yeah.
And then since, it's possible for them to maybe get an MVP, within 3, 4, 5 months, then maybe just go straight from there.
But it's crazy. We make investments now.
What's your average kind of investment?
It's all fixed. So it's a new model this year with the stipend style arrangement that I described. But the last program we did, we just put in kind of when they were stable, we put in 17.5K for 8%. It's just totally fixed. We cannot get them to spend that money. Right. It sounds like a tiny amount of money, right? None of them spend it. It's not like...
Can they spend it on rent, or that is actually for company costs?
Well, they can pay themselves a salary, for example, but they do not. They're just so lean, and I think what we're seeing. I mean, one of the guys who comes in and talks to the founders is Ed Ray, who's one of the founders at Betfair. He tells this great story. When they set up Betfair, they had to raise $1 million before they even kind of opened up to buy the servers. Like, our guys would never pay anything for servers, never mind buying them. And, not only that, but they just don't want to spend money on anything. And it just means that the real, what are the barriers if you are that kind of incredibly smart computer scientist? Well, There's, I guess, can you afford to live? Well, we pay a stipend. There's a like, does it mean that I'm going to cripple my career? Well, no, that's crazy. Like, we have a 100% employment rate, even among those who don't succeed in their company. Maybe what are the other barriers? I mean, why wouldn't you give this a go? Is where we want to get to, and I think we're getting there. And I think the faster we scale, the more we'll get that mind share. That means that people do come and give it a try.
What's holding you back from scaling? I guess is cash.
No. Actually, no. It's mainly like process and learning.
Okay.
It's the last thing I would want to pretend is that it's a clean and straightforward process. I can imagine our cohort listening to this and thinking, man, that makes it sound easy. It's messy. It's really, really messy.
They come out this end, and great companies come out this end.
Exactly. It's gorgeous.
You're dealing with people,
it's
and
people
and personalities.
And I hope we're really transparent about this. Like, it is not for everyone. Like, there are super highs and super lows, and people do fall out with their co-founders, and it's really messy. And right now, I would say a lot of my time goes on not the kind of really bad bits, but the kind of like just human side of it. Like, the biggest challenge in scaling is really finding the right people and the right processes to make those messy bits just clean enough that we can keep growing. So, for example, I think right now we have a huge pool of mentors who come in and help, and that's great. And I don't know where we'd be without them. But what we see time and time again is what companies at this stage, which is the earliest stage, need is continuity. And right now, Alice and I are the only people that provide the continuity to them. So launching from the September program, we're going to have some part-time partners who come in on a more regular basis and provide that continuity. And if we can make that work, then I think that takes away one of the massive barriers to scale.
I think team building exercises and falling backwards
Trust.
and to catch you or offsites.
Not quite. Our team building
English for that too.
No, I mean we encourage them to spend a lot of time together. And we don't monitor what they do when they do that. But the main thing we do is make them build things together. I really, as I said, this isn't for everyone. It really is for builders. It's for people who want to create products with exciting technology. And we find by far the best way for them to build bonds and build trust is spend a weekend not doing very much sleeping and just building. And you'll get to know people pretty quickly that way. And so we make them do it again and again and again, really. I mean, the summer, if you join EF, you're only 1 day a week with us, but that 1 day a week, you'll be creating real products with the people that we select.
Work environment must be really important to keep that vibe just right between feeling good and open and work ethic, I'm guessing.
It's really tricky. It's something we, again, kind of changing a bit in that at first we said, you have to work in the EF offices. It's really important to create in the community, which is true, but actually it makes it pretty noisy pretty quickly and pretty... It's not clear to me anymore that that's the most productive way of doing it. So we're very fortunate, again, in our kind of workspace sponsor that we have these 6 sites across London that the guys can use. So now what we say is you have to be in on Mondays for check-in with me or Alice, and you have to be in on Fridays to do our kind of end-of-week demos, which is how we kind of build the sense of collaborative but competitive. Oh man, Colin's got pretty far this week. Right. I need to get pretty far this week. And the rest of the time they can work wherever they want.
I like that structure. That sounds good. All right. Well, this is Silicon Real, so it's time to get real. You've got a couple grumpy old men in the house,
right?
Who we both used to work, in a kind of a Wall Street area. You in Toronto, I was in New York City and London, and we've had this conversation time and time again. I'm kind of new to this space, and we see a lot of guys that are coming straight out of college and they want to be an entrepreneur. They're going to start this and they're going to start that, but they've never had a job for a while. You worked at McKinsey. We both worked in banking, and we know there's a few things you get from doing that. Like Colin says, you got to show up on time. You have to do what your boss says, even if you don't like it. You have to do all these things. And we think that it's an asset to have that going into any type of venture, to know how to work. And we don't even know if you can get that without. So what do you say to people that say you can't take these guys straight from the college campus and put them right into a startup?
I'd say go talk to the investors who do their seed and A rounds and tell them that.
But you know what I mean.
And
you've been in that world.
Yeah, no. I think there's there's an element of that, and I think we would say that most of it for us is filtered out in the selection process. We're not. You could be a complete genius and build anything, but if if during selection it becomes very clear that you can't, turn up,
But I mean, that's an interview. How do you determine that's an interview?
Well, we do a lot of things during our selection process other than interviews, including we actually hold a selection hackathon where they have to turn up on time, work in a team. We watch them work in a team. We watch them interact with people. The other thing is I actually think that you can replicate a lot of the kind of the benefits of a corporate environment with a sufficiently structured program. Like, if you have like weekly demos where you're like, you're going to have to show not just everyone you're with, everyone you've been selected with, but some external guest, which is what we do every week, kind of where you're up to. Like, you just look stupid if you've done nothing, and you either sink or swim in that environment. And our model is very much built on the fact that they're not all going to be Mark Zuckerberg, right? We're going to lose some, and that's fine. And if actually going through the process is what it takes for us to work out who is up for this and who's not, that's fine. And the model's robust to that. That's not how we kind of make our money. That said, you would be amazed at how the best of them, the ones that are kind of building the companies that are now valued at millions, they don't have this problem. Like you can't tell that they're 22. You feel they've kind of had 10 years in banking. You can't tell that they've never worked in an office environment before. They've just got that inherent maturity. And one of the things we actually explicitly look for in interview is, do they feel older than they are? And one of my favorite ever moments last year was we have this great company, Kivo. They kind of do Git, as in version control for non-developers. So if you're using Microsoft Office, you can do nicely version control versions of what you're doing. And their key customer group, at least when they were starting out, was management consultants. And I remember talking to an angel investor who was like looking at their seed round, and he was like, yeah, but you've kind of cheated with Kivo because they've all worked in consulting before. I was like, no, they haven't. And he's like, yeah, the guy was at McKinsey. It's like, no, he wasn't. And like, I think that actually the best people, and we're in a fortunate position to be really picky, they're kind of ageless. Like, they just pick this up. If you were really, really good at customer development, if you go out and talk to your customers again, you become like them. And actually, if you talk to Kivo, like you can totally believe that they would have been management consultants. Actually, they're both graduated straight out of uni, kind of summer 2012.
Fair enough. Okay, that's a pretty good answer. You got anything you want to say?
No, I like it. I think it's phenomenal. I love the twist on kind of the incubator approach. I think there's so many accelerators and incubators, and I think we're not even halfway through.
It's a favorite topic of ours.
Colin and I have an acronym. It's called NAI, not another incubator.
Yeah, I think it's a serious. I mean, I think if you're starting an incubator now, I think you've got to like look long and hard and say, there's only one question that matters in the economics of incubators, which is why would anyone come here instead of Y Combinator? I think that's the only question that matters, because venture returns are on a power law. You don't kind of get 10% of the returns from the best 10%. You get 99% of the returns from the best 1%.
Right.
So if you're going to not pick Dropbox, like you lose all your economics. If one of the reasons that we don't want to take team, we get a lot of people apply who are in teams with ideas. The question we ask is like, why do you want to come here? If you could get into Y Combinator, you should go to Y Combinator. If you can't get into Y Combinator, we don't want you. And that's like mean, but like actually it's a huge issue for anyone starting a new accelerator is you make money from a tiny, tiny proportion of massive outlier winners. And I'm not saying that, YC can pick perfectly and, they'll always get the right ones, but it's a pretty big bet that you're basically taking the people that other people didn't want, but you still think they're going to provide the outside winners.
And I think it's dangerous because a lot of them now are becoming sector specific. So, education, for example, or stuff like that. And I think, again, you're picking the idea and you're picking the sector, when I think what you guys are doing is incredible, because I really, truly believe that it is in the people and it is in the team. And you take any good team and they'll kind of make whatever they choose to be successful. Yeah. And so I think fostering that in an environment with mentors is great. And I think your success will probably be not that 1%, but you might have a wider range. But you may not have the knockout, but I think on average your success will probably be greater.
I mean, I think what we have told our investors and what we truly believe is we believe we can build Y Combinator quality teams before these people are eligible to go to Y Combinator. And two of our teams did go to Y Combinator, and we don't want to be a finishing school. That's not a long run aim, but I think for us it's like testament to the quality of the people that you can get in, which I do think is a real challenge if you're generic accelerator that doesn't have a differentiator. And I'm sure there are lots of accelerators that do have differentiators, but
so why hasn't someone tried to copy you guys, or have they?
Well, I don't think many people know about us yet. I think it's super early for us.
Too late.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm joking. But well, I think it does sound crazy. I mean, I remember whenever our startups have bad meetings, either with investors or mentors, where they come and they say, like, man, those guys hated us. They were just like, why are you even doing this? Alice and I always just say, every meeting we ever had when we started EF, they were like, cool, that's really nice, well done, goodbye.
Yeah.
Like, people thought it was totally crazy. And I guess in some ways it is, like if you listen to the rhetoric around teams that investors, particularly kind of seed investors, put out, it's hard to imagine that you could ever replicate the kind of team that people want to invest in through this process. I think just empirically you seem to be able to, and we think the teams that have come out of the last couple of programs are incredible. But I think we're totally realistic about this, that if we continue to produce great results, then people will try and do it, and that's fine.
Does anything like this exist in the US?
Seems
like the US, they'd be pulling them out of high school.
Not that we know
My
of.
next question.
I mean, there are definitely programs that have a view of kind of founder first. So the Founder Institute, for example, although it's certainly not quite the same intensity of program. I mean, I kind of see our competitive advantage is that, as I said, it's incredibly messy, and the devil is in the detail, and the mess is how is it messy is the question, and I think that's what we've learned.
Interviewing 700 applicants alone is a bit of an operational.
Ultimately it's a human services issue. I mean, I mean, you're dealing with so many personalities and individuals, and that is your capital, and then how you interact with them, and you don't want to.
And our recruitment networks. I mean, we just hired this amazing woman, Zoe, to kind of work full time on talent, just because it was becoming such a huge part of Alice and my roles, and she was formerly at McKinsey and Apple, and she just gets what like hackers want, and we've got some exciting stuff coming out.
Do you pull people out of like freshman year, a la Bill Gates, a la Zuckerberg? Do people drop out of school to be with you?
People drop out, but we don't pull them out. So if we get an applicant and they tell us, hey, I'm in my second year, we don't say, I'm sorry, you can't come, but equally we do not target those people.
Okay, so I mean, like Colin says, are you tempted to innovate more and go to the high school or get in earlier, or at least maybe so they know about you their freshman year?
So we're going to launch in September something called Founder School, which is going to be our on-campus kind of activity. And rather than doing a kind of autumn recruitment push, we want to be in university year round, and we want to be a brand that you know about from day one. And the way we do that is just by being really authentic. It's not going to be a recruiting brand, it's going to be a building brand. Like, we're going to help people build the stuff that they want to build. If you go look at a computer science curriculum in the UK, it's not about building. By and large, there are exceptions, but by and large it's very theoretical. So we want to be the place on campus, even in your first year, that you come and meet other builders and come and build stuff. And I think we've learned a lot about how to pull that off in the last 3 years, and I think once we've rolled that out, I think that's going to make it even stronger as an option for people leaving, but also going to mean that we encounter these people earlier, which is great.
There's an article in the New York Times this last week, and it was like how Google hires, and they come out saying they don't use GPAs anymore and stuff like that. And it was just all the different ways of interacting with a team, and how they, like having the ego, but admitting you're wrong, and like all of these different ways and metrics, I think they look at. You probably read that. Were they copying your ideas?
Google are brilliant at this, like really, truly brilliant at recruitment. We firmly believe, and in fact, we've got a couple of people that show it, that there are certain kind of personality types for whom our value proposition makes more sense, at least at that kind of graduate stage. But Google are definitely the most obvious competitor from a recruitment point of view.
Yeah. All right. Talk to us about women. Where are they? You said most of your program is men.
Yeah.
We have women guests here.
Yeah.
But this is a fairly male-dominated industry right now. Is that going to change? Why is that?
Well, we hope it will change. I was fortunate in that, like, the smartest, most driven, determined person I knew when I wanted to set up EF was a woman, and so kind of having Alice, I couldn't have done this without Alice, and I hope is a great role model for women looking at our organisation. Is that as they graduate, it's like, well, actually, Alice has totally built this great organisation. I hope that's what they think. It's a huge issue for us. broadly reflects the fact that we're very technical in focus. And if you look at computer science departments, engineering departments, they are roughly the same ratio as us, maybe a little bit better.
80% male?
80+% male.
Wow. So out of 100 applicants that you get, what's the percentage of male to female?
So yeah, it's not great. We probably get about 20-ish% female applicants. By final round, that's probably down to about 15%, and in the cohort, it's probably about 10%.
Interesting. And that needs to change.
I think it needs to change for us. I mean, like the people, we run a program called Code First Girls. It's a program to encourage young women to learn to code. We provide on-campus free coding education for women.
Like college level or
college
earlier?
level?
Okay.
Yeah, college level. And we do it because one, I think it's the right thing to do, but actually more importantly, we're a talent-based program. We don't take ideas, we don't take teams. So if we're going to say, 50% of the population just isn't wired for this, like we're crazy, right? We're going to miss out on huge opportunity. So for us, it's really, really important, just commercially, that we find the brilliant women. And for whatever reason right now, partly because of what the skills they learned during university, and partly because of mentality and stereotypes around this industry, they're not applying. And when they are applying, they're unfortunately not selling themselves as well as their male counterparts. And they actually, in many cases, haven't developed the same skill sets.
It's something the Facebook, COO said in her book. She talked about how, women don't sell themselves as much or ask, traditionally as much as men do.
Sure.
Which I guess in an entrepreneurial business.
I was reading, I don't know if it was that book, but another said, a lot of the time women anticipate that their superior will be fair when they won't, whereas men kind of force that fairness.
Yeah.
So we'll ask and be like, you know what, my buddy over here at this company is getting paid this, and I should be getting paid that, rather than being like, oh, well, if my friend's getting paid that, then I'm sure.
What was her name? What was the Facebook girl that wrote that book?
Sheryl Sandberg.
Yeah, she was saying how she didn't even counteroffer Zuckerberg when he first gave her the offer, and her husband was like, are you fucking crazy? Like, you're going to be doing the negotiations for most of Facebook, and you're not counter-offering your equity piece? And she's like, oh yeah. And so she did, and then they met in the middle. But, it's just, for a woman at high level, it's just, maybe it's just a different mentality, which means that they can be great on teams for bringing completely different things to the table too.
Yeah, and I think, it's also, there's lots of studies that show that men and women are objectively the same level of expertise, even self-assess at, like, whole standard deviations different of ability, and that's huge as a problem. For us though, I really think it's actually a kind of not to pass the buck, but like it really is, we're not going to become less technically oriented. In fact, if anything, we'll become more so. And so it really is going to come down to skill sets and making sure that women don't say, engineering is not for me, women don't say maths is not for me or whatever. And there's some fantastic initiatives going on that I think will have an impact in the medium term. And in the short term, I hope Code First is having a little bit of an impact too.
Okay, talk to us about London tech scene. We're obviously here in London. It's something we talk about where we are in comparison to the world right now. What's the biggest beef you have right now with the London tech scene? The biggest problem we're facing, the thing we need to overcome to get us to the next level or to the top level as a city?
Well, I think maybe the same answer to the last segment. I think we need a little bit more self-confidence, really. I don't see major barriers, at least at the stage that we work at. If I wanted to be bullish, I'd say we have incredible talent, really, and at the graduate level, but also elsewhere. And there's now definitely getting to the stage where if you look at the larger startups that are either exiting or preparing to exit, they're starting to throw off genuinely world-class product managers, genuinely world-class senior engineers who are starting their own things. I think, like in terms of access to capital, I think fantastic time to be fundraising in London. I think SEIS, the tax break scheme, has made a huge difference at the very kind of early seed level. There's a proliferation, in a good sense, of funds, micro funds, led by genuinely experienced entrepreneurs, product people who've been around the block in this sector. It's very early days, but there's encouraging signs, from the London Stock Exchange, etc., that also the exit market is starting to be more hospitable. So I think partly we can stop looking so kind of forlornly westward and complaining about how we can't do what's out there, and just remember that I think there's like massive returns to generational turnover in startups. You want angels who have sold companies. You want, senior engineers who have scaled companies. You want product people who have shipped to millions, hundreds of millions of people. And that comes with time and with generations. But I don't see any reason why this generation of London tech, shouldn't produce Valley-style generations 3 or 4 generations down the line. And of course, generations, I mean, short startup generations, not human generations. Yeah.
So it's just a confidence issue to a certain extent.
And time. I mean, like Silicon Valley has like couple of decades head start, right? 3 decades head start. But I also think that London has a lot of advantages, in terms of, I think we see increasingly that, exciting startups tend to come from a fusion of fantastic technical talent and real domain expertise. And actually London has some fantastic domains that are not tech, out of which you see, great startups coming. I met earlier today the guys who run Touch Surgery, which is 2 surgeons who, great surgeons and realized a massive opportunity in how do we teach surgeons using tech, and have built a fantastic company that way. I think fintech is clearly massive in London, fashion, music. There's, in terms of where are the domain experts who are going to really understand these problems, I don't think London has anything to worry about there.
Yeah, well, it's a proper urban scene here, so you've got a bit of everything when it comes to 6-10 million people. So we're going to have someone in fashion on soon, and those people wouldn't necessarily be hanging out necessarily in Silicon Valley. So
I mean, I think there's I guess this is somewhat EF centric, but I think there is a big difference in the mentality of kind of tech people. Maybe not kind of later in their careers, but one thing that really strikes us, having spent a little bit of time out in the States, I was at grad school there and kind of with work since, I think people get into computer science for very different reasons in the US and the UK. One way of thinking about it is that, if you look at the difference between a Stanford engineer and a Cambridge engineer, it's almost that for a Cambridge engineer, it's more of an intellectual pursuit. It's more of there's nothing wrong with that at all. Whereas almost, they're kind of classic engineers who then have to decide what to do with their lives. Whereas CS at Stanford has almost such a long heritage that you get kind of megalomaniacs drawn to CS because computer science is how you express your desire to change the world. And I almost think that, we can do that at EF. EF is almost like an institution to make megalomaniacs of computer scientists, whereas Stanford is an institution to, kind of make computer scientists of megalomaniacs. And I think over time, kind of from creating role models, if we can get a British Zuckerberg, then maybe you get more people applying for CS because they see it as a way to have an impact on the world, rather than us afterwards saying, hey, wouldn't you like to change the world? And actually, lucky you can use the skills you've already got.
Good observations. What did I miss before I hit him with the question?
Yeah, I guess I think from a psychological perspective, I think you guys are building so much data. And so I think it'd be interesting to hear from your perspective, maybe, if you had to choose the top 1, 2, or 3 personality traits that you find of the successful teams or applicants of those teams. What would you say those are?
We're obsessed with this question. We think this is fascinating. There's a great paper that a guy in Stanford, whose name escapes me, unfortunately, wrote on what are the kind of big character traits that set aside successful entrepreneurs from other people. And the number one thing he identified was something he calls personal exceptionalism, which is basically the belief that sure, most people have a 1 in a billion chance of starting $1 billion company, but that's most people, and I'm not most people. And actually, kind of, that finds expression in lots of different ways, and we see that again and again in the most successful exceptionalism. So is
another way of saying arrogant or confident?
Not arrogant, not arrogant, but I think it's saying that sure, those odds might apply to most people, but they don't apply to me. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of those people who are wrong.
Sure.
And that's kind of
self-awareness.
Right. But, if you look at what were the odds against any of the people who've really made a dent in the universe or whatever through creating companies, they were right. Yeah. Those odds didn't apply to them.
So they're dreamers? No.
No, not exceptionalism.
I don't even know what that means still.
It means that you believe you are a personal exception to the rules. It means that you are saying...
Psychopath.
Sociopath. I think it's more that you can consider it a matter of probability, right? It's I have a 1, people in general have a 1 in a million chance of being successful at this, but that's partly because they're not me. I'm not saying that about myself. I'm
Right.
saying this is
Right,
what
okay.
this is what these guys are saying,
That's
right?
the mentality.
I think that kind of personal confidence, I think,
Yeah.
because you give up a lot to try to start
The
something.
opportunity cost is huge
Sure,
for these people.
Sure, and if you just break down the opportunity cost to a fixed number, generally just on a piece of paper you'll lose, right? So you have to think you're going to succeed.
Exactly. So if you do a rational calculation of like, I could go make 100K a year at Goldman, or I could do this, and you basically try and work out how much this is worth by timesing an exit value by some probability, you have to have a kind of irrational
NPV of
you need to have a kind of a rational view of what that probability is to make it add up.
Right.
But actually, that's irrational overconfidence. I don't know, but it is a huge thing, and we do see that a lot. And I think the most important thing is, I'm being slightly facetious about people on the kind of like as they come in making that calculation, but it's more when you hit a setback. Do you say like, oh, maybe I'm not all I thought I was, or do you say, oh man, I can't believe I've hit this setback. Must be doing it wrong because obviously I'm going to succeed.
Right.
Because if you don't think you're going to succeed, if you don't really believe you're going to succeed, how do you not read the countless setbacks that you encounter as evidence that you should give up?
Right.
So it says rational people need not apply on your.
Broadly, I think that if you are like a real odds calculator and you're just going to run the numbers, it doesn't make sense for you.
Right,
it really doesn't. And so that's quite a nice filter.
Yeah, that's good. And you've got a way of finding those people by asking questions.
We have a test that we're experimenting with.
It's like it's probably like
funny,
he's going to sell it to the U.S. Army.
So one of my really good friends from grad school, he works for a big firm, Korn Ferry, so huge recruitment firm, and his background is in psychology, and so he sort of works. He does a lot of things for him, but one of the cool things is he sort of pre-interviews a lot of CEOs and a lot of entrepreneurs for these.
They do executive hires.
Exactly, right. And so the cost of hiring the wrong CEO is really expensive. And so I talk to him all the time about successful personality traits, and I think it's a fascinating topic.
This paper identifies a few others, which to be honest we've not seen as strongly, but it's interesting. So like one of them is like dichotomous thinking. So this guy argues that successful entrepreneurs tend to kind of lack nuance in how they evaluate ideas. Like it's either this is the best thing ever or it's a piece of shit. And and that kind of makes, it kind of makes sense, right? Is that you're like, well, I've got to do this idea because it's the greatest thing ever. And that kind of almost breeds the irrational optimism that makes you keep going when you're not sure that you will. I think that's quite interesting as an idea.
Sounds like something Steve Jobs would say.
Yeah,
I think he's said that in the past.
Yeah.
We always ask everyone that's sitting there a few questions at the end, so I'm going to hit you with them. If you could give the young 20-year-old Matt Clifford a phone call and give him a bit of advice, what would you tell him?
Oh, that's a great question.
When did you start at McKinsey, out of curiosity?
I started McKinsey in 2009.
So you would have been
23?
I'd been to grad school, so I was 20.
So you're older. So you're already long gone. So the 20-year-old.
Well, I kind of like where I am, so I'm really enjoying myself. So I'd be really loath to give myself any advice that would push me wildly off course. I'm sure there's lots of ways I could have been richer, but
would you have advised him not to go for the glory job at McKinsey? Because that's kind of what you're telling these young grads.
Well,
I
think if you changed it to a 15-year-old Matt Clifford, I'd have probably said, "Don't stop coding." Because I did, and that kind of meant that actually I would never get into EF. Hands up. I went to MIT as a grad student. I did a lot of statistics and data stuff, and I think it gives me just enough tech credibility to kind of get by. But I was one of those massive geeks who at 13 was like making stuff in Visual Basic, and I totally gave it up in favor of much more kind of cool things when I was 15. And that really meant that by the time I came around to actually doing a degree and applying for jobs, I couldn't have done EF. So I guess by the time I was like 21, I was pretty set. But I definitely, and I'd said this to any 15-year-old now, it's like, wow, you've got like 6 years before you have to even seriously think about whether you might want a job. Like in 6 years, you can be pretty good at coding. And like when I see the opportunities available to the guys who are just extremely strong technically coming into EF, like they have opportunities that I never would have had with my skill set.
So keep coding.
Keep coding.
What course were you at MIT?
I did I did a whole bunch. It's a complicated story. I had a scholarship that allowed me to basically do what I wanted, which was very lucky. So I did a bunch of stuff in maths, a bunch of stuff in statistics, things in economics, but mainly doing applied statistics.
Okay, course 18, then maths.
All that stuff.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. Second part of that question is, what's the best advice you've ever received, business or personal?
Well, I think it varies a lot depending on whether you. I mean, I think the best advice that I've received that I pass on to our startups is just kind of focus relentlessly on doing one thing really, really, really well. And for a startup, I think that's completely crucial. The number of times our teams fail or slow down just because they get distracted is enormous, and it's one of those things that sounds incredibly obvious, and yet it's so difficult to live versus to know. Like, oh, I know I'm meant to focus, but do you live focus? So that strikes me as kind of extremely important on the startup side. On a personal side, I think like write stuff down would be the best advice. Like
lists of things to do. Or?
Just thoughts, ideas. Like the way I see it is like you have a kind of finite lifetime, and most of it is kind of lived experiences in your head, and if you don't like have any record of what you're thinking, you kind of lose a lot of that lived experience. Like
dreams, they just go.
Yeah, so I'm totally.
How long before you download everything?
Well, I mean that's quite. I mean, like, so I was about to say I'm a compulsive Evernote user. Like so after every meeting I have, every book I read, not quite every article I read, but anything like significant, I like immediately try and write down like a summary, synthesis in Evernote. But like Evernote's slogan, I think, is everyone's digital brain, right? So I'm sure they're thinking hard about exactly that. Yeah. But like write stuff down. Like it's amazing how often Evernote's really cool because when you type a note now, it tells you, it kind of suggests other notes that you've written that are interesting. And the number of times I'm writing a note about a meeting and it brings up a note about another meeting that I had 2 years ago.
I gotta read.
And it's like, oh wow, yeah, like I need that thought right now, and it's incredible.
That's biohacking right there.
See, I gave up on Evernote a while back. I tried it and hated it, and it didn't work for me. And so I actually old school. I have like a little pad that I keep in my pocket all the time, and I'm writing stuff down all the time. But I'm gonna give Evernote.
I think you have to like almost, maybe this is just like a kind of personality flaw, but I have to like set myself really strict limits. So I said to myself, I'm only gonna make 3 bullet points after every meeting, and so it really forces you to like condense it. Because my problem is I used to want to keep a diary obsessively because I just like, as I say, like recording things, and the problem is I'd start writing these diaries and it took me like an hour and I'd have written like 1,000 words, and it's like I just can't keep this up. Whereas if I tell myself you're only allowed 3 things, I'm much more likely to do it.
And the computer can analyze those 3 things much better than your 1,000-word diary.
Yeah.
They say it's a good way to like crystallize your thoughts by writing things down. And they say, some people say you actually writing it by hand is even better than
I'm sure that probably is true.
If you have the time. But
it improves retention so much, thinking about what you want to remember.
So I remember like learning French as a kid.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how I've always had to revise that way. Yeah.
Matt, I love this story. I love this whole idea. It's really innovative in a scene where that word is used too much. This really is. So thanks so much for coming on. How do people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about you or apply for next year?
Well, we are entrepreneurfirst.org.uk or Google us. We come up. I'm Matt at entrepreneurfirst.org.uk, and on Twitter I'm Matthew Clifford.
Fantastic.
Very cool.
Silicon Reel, if you're listening to us on iTunes, we are on YouTube. You can come watch us. Come check us out, YouTube channel Silicon Reel. We're on Twitter. If you want to help us out, we love help. So send us an email at hello@siliconreel.com. We've got some people that are really helping us out with videos and things like that.
Yeah.
If you also want to be a part as far as a sponsor on the show, come contact us. Our inventory is going quickly, but it's a great way to get in touch with the scene and people that are constantly looking at this place. From all over the world. So there you go.
Episode 35, it's a wrap.
Yeah, episode 35, fantastic, going strong.
Thanks for having me.
And guest suggestions, please hit them up. We're looking for amazing, stories, great companies, great people, great investors, all types of stuff. So hit us up with ideas. We get them every now and again, and keep them coming because I'm there responding most of the time to Twitter and following up. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, you're all over that Twitter account. As we say on Silicon Reel, it's about the people. Thanks for your story, Matt. All the best.
Thank you.
I can't wait to talk to him in like 3 years. And
Yeah,
Jesus
see the success
Christ,
stories.
Yeah, the amount of companies. So that's fantastic. Thanks so much for coming in, and yeah, all the best.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, thanks.
New world of media, it's all about tone of voice, building audience, and building that point of view that people want to keep coming back to your channel. Some of the top clips in terms of earning us money today were produced 3 years ago. And when we look at vintages of content that we've made, we make more money on our 08 produced content this year than we have in any other year. Messi versus Ronaldo, when they're top players, it's going to be relevant for years rather than the moment in time. So if we said, here's Messi's reaction to such and such, that's only maybe a couple of hours worth of heat in terms of trending. But Messi versus Ronaldo, it's proved to be somewhat timeless.